Welcome to the Lair, a place where interesting people you may know tell you things you didn't. So grab a chair and your favorite vice and get comfortable. There are no rules in the Lair, but there is Laura Babcock. You know her from TV, and she is not into media monogamy. Let's find out who else is in the Lair.
By the way, we're here with Marvin Ryder in the Lair.
Sorry.
We always just start the conversation
That's
and then introduce the show. And Marvin, for those of you who are in the area, would probably know him from his esteemed career at McMaster. He's also a television pundit on CH Television. And whenever there's something going on in terms of business or marketing, you're the go-to guy for the media.
I seem to be, yes.
You
right.
are, for lots of great reasons. Why do you think that Hamilton sells itself short? As somebody said to me earlier today, it was a brilliant line. They said, what was that line? Do you remember, Rob? It could have been you that said it. You said, Hamilton is the most short-sighted place he's ever seen. We seem to cut off our nose to spite our face for no good reason that I can come up with.
I think what you're seeing is reminiscent to me of Britain in the 1950s and 60s. In the year 1900, the world's dominant economy was Britain. And then after 2 world wars and the productivity of the United States, Britain suddenly found itself in number 2 or number 3 position. The sun didn't always shine on the British Empire. There was a tough time, and they went through quite a malaise for about 20 years, and you could argue that it was the arrival of Margaret Thatcher that allowed them to rethink their role, and they got comfortable with the fact that they were one of, but not the leading power. Now, why I say that to you is 2 things to me have happened in Hamilton. In the 1950s, this was the place to be in Canada. If something was made in Canada, it was made in Hamilton.
No, you weren't here at the time, were you? You came later. Yes.
No, I wasn't even born in 1950, but anyway.
I knew that, clearly. I meant
Neither
1959 in 11 months.
I arrived here in 82. So, but in the 1950s, if something was made in Canada, it was made here. And you would pick up articles that would talk about the future of Hamilton being bright and spectacular because people took that trend and extrapolated it. It also framed city planning because 75% of the tax revenue that was coming from those businesses. So we could afford things. We could afford a Hamilton Place. We could even afford a Cops Coliseum because we were having all that industrial base. So the 2 things that have happened, number one is we've lost a lot of that, and the burden has shifted to taxpayers, residential taxpayers, away from the industrial taxpayers.
Hasn't it been a complete flip from 60-40
yeah,
commercial
it's
industrial to
70-30.
70-30?
70-30, and so it's flipped, and of course as individuals, no one's ever happy about paying 1 nickel of taxes, let alone my assessment this year is over $6,000. Wow. So no one's happy about that. And then the second thing that's happened, I think, is as you've gone through this malaise, people show up and they sing a song. And they sing a song you want to hear. Oh, this city is just about to turn a corner. This city, and
we've been on the cusp of a renaissance
for
since
25 years.
Yeah.
And everybody who sings these songs, it just slips, and you get disappointed. And it is hard to stay positive, both because of what you see, but also the sort of false prophets that have come to town.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to link these 2 words
Please
exactly.
do the NHL bid.
No, well, I was going to say, I actually had a small involvement of that back in 1990.
I know you did, that's why I'm bringing it up.
But Harry Stinson as an example, and I don't want to call him a false prophet, but my measure of Harry Stinson is build something.
Right.
Once you've built it, then I'm going to listen to you.
So you know what was crushing to me
I'm
about
not going to
Harry?
listen to you until then.
And you know what, and maybe I'll have him here in the Lair because he's an interesting guy, there's no doubt. Harry, when he came to town, had his grand vision of that spire that would rise. I thought, you know what, I'm not from Hamilton originally, but been in the scene for 15 years fairly actively. I thought, you know what, here's somebody who's built stuff before. Toronto Condo King, had some success. He's coming into town, like Bob Young saving the Ticats a few years back. Maybe he can actually build something aspirational. And I'm not going to sit by and be a naysayer and say, oh, because things have sucked in the past, they're going to suck again. I refuse to be beaten down. I bought into it, went to it, brought it up on our TV show, made it part of our programming, blah, 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 and it doesn't happen. I've since sat down at dinner tables with Harry at events and stuff, and he's got another big project in the works. I want to believe Marvin, but I'm also, not
Well,
a
how
fool.
many times can you go down that road?
Right, and how many times
so
has
you
the
said
city gone
15
down it?
years. Imagine you've been here since the 60s, and
Right.
you've heard the grand vision of Jackson Square.
And the Connaught and everything else.
And then they just keep slipping. Now, the wise person does grab onto the straws that are real. But, you know, there have been
was
some
cool.
projects that one should grab onto
Right.
and focus on. The Bell Lofts building as an
Yeah.
example, the Chateau Royale, those have been good
So
things.
how do you separate the chaff from the wheat?
I just base it on somebody's experience. So,
Mm-hmm.
again, not to pick on poor Harry, but he was billed as the condo king, so I did my own checking. And when I did my own due diligence, well,
See,
his
I've heard-
projects in Toronto came with a number of
And I've
asterisks.
heard that from naysayers as well, but like when you're in the public eye, people want to call and contribute their thoughts on things to you, and you sort of take it with a grain of salt. You know, if it's not firsthand evidence, I don't put too much stock in rumors. But just moving past Harry for a second, one of the groups that I have found that bulks that, and maybe it's for the reason that you cite, is that longevity builds a little bit of cynicism, right? When we've done stuff with young entrepreneurs group in town, because I'm kind of wedged in between. I'm a Gen Xer, you know, hang out with the established, but also with the people who are up and coming. They are fiercely, I don't even want to say offensive, they're almost defensive of Hamilton, saying, no, everyone else tried, and whether they failed or succeeded is irrelevant. We heard this the night of the Make Party. We're making this city work. We've got the talent. We're not driving to Toronto because we don't want to. And, you know, between all of us, our collective ability, and there are people who stand out in that crowd who are really doing a great job.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Marvin, I've heard a lot of years of, see, applause. I've heard a lot of years, you guys were at that party too, weren't you, Monica, I think?
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of the business leaders over the years. I've been on the HCC and JPC and all the rest of it. But these guys are not talking about the potential of the city. They're saying, actually, shut up. We don't even want to hear the negatives. It's our city. It's our future.
Yeah.
We're building it. The rest of you, you know,
I think
thanks, but we got this.
I think the another challenge is part of this is when you're in this kind of a funk, the temptation is to try to find that one thing that's going to
The
drive us out,
panacea,
the
yeah.
panacea. So in 1990, to talk about this, the NHL bid, if we just got an NHL team, then that's going to put
Now, you
us
were
on
on
the
that bid,
map.
right? The 90
so the 90 bid, I was on the HEC-5 board. I wasn't part of the bid committee per se, but we lucked into a wonderful bidder in the person of Ron Joyce, and I actually feel sorry for Mr. Joyce. He had a $50 million cashier's check. Imagine a $50 million,
Yeah.
which he said, I'll give to you NHL if you'll just tell me how much I have to pay Toronto and Buffalo. They said, give us the check, then we'll tell you. And he said, no, you tell me, then I'll give
Yeah.
you the check. And they said, oh, if you're going to do that, then you're out of the thing. But would an NHL team be it? No. Would the Spire have been it?
Right.
It's about doing, I have a saying, it's not about doing one thing 100% better, it's about doing 100 things 1% better.
It's a good
So,
example.
and that's frustrating to people because you can't hold it in your hand. You can't look at this one thing and
Right.
say, this is the savior. Let's all get behind this
You know
one
what I
thing.
think it is? I think it is the organic neighborhood development. I think Ottawa Street,
Right.
James Street North,
Locke.
Locke Street, it has Concession Street, King William. I mean, those are what is changing the city.
Do you think that people thought Pan Am was this?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, tell us. Oh, okay.
Or the Tiger Cats for that.
Okay,
Or the
where
Tiger
we-
Cats, yeah, no,
Okay, but
that's
that
great.
being said, you know, there was, you know, that big new screen, and Bob Young threw some cash, and those were exciting years originally with the Tie Cats. But Pan Am, you know, I should have maybe emailed you during Pan Am. I don't think we corresponded. Every Saturday morning, every time the spec came out, I was on email or Twitter or whatever, talking to anyone on council, the mayor. The whole situation with Pan Am was, well, you describe it. I've got
I'm going to say
my
there were
words for
two
it.
mistakes made, and one probably couldn't have been avoided. The initial Pan Am bid started as a Toronto bid, and then the Ontario government said, well, we'd really like to see it be a bit more regional. So with very little time, they reached out to communities like Hamilton, and Hamilton said, well, if we could have a chance, we'll take one of these and one of these and one of these. Location to be determined. So in the bid book, pretty artist conception of a stadium or a velodrome or what
Right.
have you got in there, and lo and behold, we go down, we win, and then we tried to find the location. And we would have probably done ourselves more of a favor to have spent more time thinking about that location first.
Yeah, preparing before.
But having said that to you, what I feel very badly about is how council got portrayed during that whole debate.
Interesting. Okay.
It's my perception that we got dragged around by our nose by the Tiger Cats. The
So
Tiger
that
Cats.
surprises me, being that you're a private sector marketing guy.
Yeah, well, the Tiger Cats, I can't say enough bad about their role in that Pan Am thing. They were we can't stay here. We can't stay at Ivor Wynne Stadium. We need a better location because we're not getting enough revenue.
Right.
And that's the problem. If you buy into their books, and of course, remember, it's their books, it's their view of their team, they're losing somewhere between $3 to $5 million a year.
Right.
So they need $3 to $5 million. They needed a better site. So we need some, okay, great. But, we'll go wherever you go, but just keep in mind we need a better site. Well, the West Harbor site would have improved their revenues somewhere between $1.5 and $2.5 million. Wouldn't have got them to the magic number, but it would have got them a lot closer. And from our standpoint, meaning the city, I think it helped present a great view. When the cameras turn from the field and pan out and show you the water and the boats in the harbor rather than Stelco and Dofasco, or excuse me, ArcelorMittal and U.S. Steel, that was exactly the view we would want to have. We can't go there, we can't go there. And so every week they threw up another scenario, and it made us look more and more foolish.
How much of it was Scott Mitchell's particular style of leadership?
I would actually put most of it there, because Bob, people love Bob, but he's not here. He's in North Carolina or South Carolina.
And when you're a billionaire, the whole argument that I need to make a little bit more cash doesn't necessarily fly, right?
Well, I don't think he's a billionaire.
Well, he told me, he's in the hundreds of millions category now.
On paper.
Okay.
On paper. I don't think he has liquid cash. That's the difference between him and Balsley. I
Right.
think Balsley could liquefy his assets much more. I'm not sure Bob is the
A paper tiger?
I think, he's put a lot of money into Lulu, which is
Yeah.
an online printing thing, which is okay, but it's not chewing up big
Right.
time in the internet world. It's not what Red Hat Linux was. But his man on the ground was Scott Mitchell. Scott Mitchell buys into an American view of football, which is that it's the savior of your community, that the ideal location is a suburban location with a great, huge paved parking lot, and it's a purpose-built stadium. Now,
Did
what
he
I liked
also
about the
build into
West
the
Harbor...
But did he also buy into the American style of negotiating?
yeah. I mean, he basically tried to hold you over the if you don't play our game, we'll take our team and go. Now, I'm not threatening. I'm just telling you.
Well, you've been to the Hamilton Club. I'm a member of the club. You never hear people yelling at the Hamilton Club, but apparently there was Mayor Fred, Scott Mitchell yell down at the club, which is so out of character for that particular environment.
For the environment, not necessarily for the personality.
Well, that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
is that style.
Very American point of view.
Yeah.
So, he led that discussion around, trying to put all these straw dogs up. So what are we left with? We're back at Ivor Wynne. Why is that suddenly acceptable to you? I don't understand. I just don't understand. If you were going to come back downtown, why wouldn't you go to the West Harbor? And what I always liked about the West Harbor was that there was the possibility with some clever design to create a multifunctional stadium. Now, what I mean by that was you could perhaps integrate a YMCA in there. You might be able to integrate some retail in there. You might have been able to do something. So this isn't a facility for 8 football games a year.
Oh, the whole development of the harborfront. It
Right.
could have been a great entertainment
Could have been tied
complex.
into-
Was
yes.
there like
Below.
condos and
Yeah,
all
there's
that
so
sorts of
many
stuff?
dreams that were dropped on the city.
Right.
So how did they get away with it?
Football teams or I don't know, Justin Bieber have fans. and the word fan...
Scott Mitchell, Justin Bieber, they're both kind of blonde.
But the Tiger Cats, not Scott Mitchell. The Tiger Cats have fans, and fan is short for the word fanatic. And if you are fanatical about something, you're not thinking logically. And so there would be a group of people in town who said, we must save the Tiger Cats at all costs.
Right.
I am not of that opinion. I don't believe the Ticats define what Hamilton is. I know.
See, there's some
boo.
fanatics.
She's a former
She's a
Tie
cheerleader.
Cat cheerleader.
I was a cheerleader for the Tiger Cats.
What
And
years were you
it's a
cheerleading?
95 to 99. I won the Grey Cup with them. That was my last
Oh
year.
man,
So
you've got
I
a
was
cheerleader in the
Yeah.
crowd.
So,
The golden, what,
although we've
1999, if that was the best year.
although we've never argued about it, through something like the Bill Kelly Show, both Mr. Mitchell and I have talked about the economic impact of the Tiger Cats. He produced a study which suggested it was worth $1 billion over 10 years. It's not. It's not anywhere near that. And the reason I'm telling you that is that economic impact study assumed A, that Hamilton was going to host the Grey Cup twice in 10 years,
Right.
B, that all the games were going to be a sellout, that they were going to increase their revenues, that they were going to have a North American Soccer League team and it was going to sell out all the time. Now that Hamilton Tiger Cat Club could be worth that. The one we've got here is worth about $45 million a year. Yes, added up over 10 years, $450 million. But to put that in context, something like Hamilton Health Sciences, in terms of economic impact, is worth $3 billion
Isn't that
a
our
year.
number one industry, health sciences?
It is.
Yeah.
But McMaster would be worth over $1 billion a year in economic activity compared to $45 million.
So it's the fanaticism.
It's just not that
But how
big
many
of a thing
fanatics are there
economically.
left in Hamilton for the
Oh,
Ticats?
tons. Oh my God.
Sorry, can I ask something?
Yeah, for sure. You on the mic? Laura, go over to the mic if you don't mind.
Okay, I'll move closer. Okay, so you have the Tiger Cats who play 8 games a year, and it's all Tiger Cats, Tiger Cats, Tiger Cats. You have the Hamilton Bulldogs, AHL. We want an NHL team. The AHL team plays 30, 40 games a year, home games, but nobody supports them, but we want the NHL. Why are we so crazy about a team that plays 8 games a year over someone that plays 30 or 40? Everybody.
You don't believe?
I don't understand the connection. Like, we want NHL so bad. I'm sure the NHL is looking at the AHL numbers where we sell 2,000 seats to a playoff game, and they're going, why would we go here?
We have the expert on both
Well,
the NHL and the Ticats.
The key to understanding the NHL bid, if there is to be a successful team here, it would be in drawing people from Oakville, Mississauga, Burlington, who can't get into Toronto to see the games. Now, that's a big gamble. My experience serving for 7 years on the HEC-5 board was that it was very hard to attract people from Burlington, Oakville, Mississauga to come to Hamilton to an event. So if you had a performer who performed, let's say, 3 nights in Toronto and 1 night in Hamilton, it was hard to get them to come here when the other events sold out. Now, inevitably, when they'd come, they'd say, oh my gosh, it's so easy to get in here, and parking's so reasonable, and it's so easy. We should come back, but they never do, because their mindset is Toronto-based. There's that big magnet that draws them down that road.
Yeah.
And I just don't know. I think it is a big gamble that an NHL team would come here. I don't know if you
So
would
why were you
sell
part
it.
of the bid back in the day? Just because Ron
Well,
had the
back
cash?
in those
or-
days, the economics were a little different,
Okay.
you know. Remember that the cost for the team was $50 million.
Right.
They're now saying that an expansion team coming to this area would be $400 million.
Wow.
And the season's tickets back then, I think, was within the reach of the people of this community. Again, people who get fanatical about the NHL, I always say to them, so you want season? Oh yeah, I want season tickets. You understand that season tickets, a pair of season tickets in decent seats, will cost you $2,500. And there's always that, what? What?
Yeah.
What? No.
So you don't think this market could sustain it?
No. In fact, that's what I worry about. You know, turning this into a panacea. What if we get this thing that's supposed to turn it around, and then guess what? We can't support it. Think what that would mean to us.
Yeah. Although it did seem there was a sweet spot this summer where it seemed like we could have the Pan Am Games, a brand new fancy stadium, entertainment complex, an NHL bid that seemed possible with Basili. I mean, there did seem like there was the trifecta. I'm with you. There's no single panacea, but it seemed as though there was the trifecta of panacea. I don't know what the plural of panacea is. Panacea? I don't know. It seemed like we had the panacea in front of us, and we didn't hit it. So let me, just before I want to shift to something else with you, Marvin, because not all of the people who listen to Laircast are from this market. This was a national story, Pan Am. My biggest regret with Pan Am was not how council was portrayed, as you indicated yours was, because you know what, that's the job. You know, perception, if you can't manage it, tough business, right? But it was the fact that I would go traveling, we've got lots of clients across Canada, I'd go to national shows, and I would hear this relentless dig about Hamilton, because I even had my uncle, an esteemed sportsman in Canadian histories in the Skiing Hall of Fame, etc. He came to my house last summer and he said, I don't understand. How does Hamilton manage to blow the Pan American Games and your strongest brand, which is, I think, part of the allure of the Ticats? He goes, how do you guys manage to screw this up? And the answer was not forthcoming.
Well, again, if I can contrast, there were 2 different coverages of this story. There was news coverage of this story through something like CTV and CBC, which I thought was very balanced. And then there was the TSN coverage of it.
Right.
And who are TSN people? They're fanatics. And who's their audience? Fanatics.
Our producer works at CBC, so he's buying your argument,
Well,
Marvin.
Well, actually, no, but TSN is also owned by CTV, and I'm
Right.
sure they use a lot of the same resources.
Well, they do, but the broadcasters, by nature, we don't just talk about, oh, today Toronto lost the game 2-1, as they were trounced or they were defeated. They upped the rhetoric in sports broadcasting, and they were the ones very much taking the Ticats' position as gold, and the city dropping the ball.
It was actually a guy who had just come in from the East Coast who was going to be the anchor of the Fan 590, I think it was. And he said to me, I forget his name, but he said, had one of these great gravelly sports voices, lots of scotch, said, "You from Hamilton?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "I am going to beat the shit out of you every single morning. As long as this Pan Am game goes on, you've given me my humor." And I thought, well, that's incredibly painful.
But that's exactly what a sports person would do, because a sportscaster buys into the Scott Mitchell point of view, and anything that's contrary to that is crazy.
So how come Scott Mitchell wasn't held to account? Did you think he advanced the brand of the city? You think he didn't win the West?
That's not his job.
No, but what I'm saying is that, I mean, not the city, the Ticat brand within the city. I think the Ticat brand took a hit. I think Bob Young floating in saying, "I'm the caretaker, Bob," when really, no, you're not. I thought that whole thing was
I
was
think,
a brand
I think he
damaging
actually spoke
exercise.
the truth there. It is quite possible we could build this stadium and there would still be no Ticats there.
Yeah.
This is not a healthy team financially, and,
But,
and
what I-
Mr.
what
Young
I'm-
doesn't have the pockets to carry
But
it.
what I'm saying is, if, as you say, Scott's approach, belief in the American model of football, his own personal approach to negotiating, what did it net? It netted, essentially, they didn't get the location that they wanted. I think the brand was damaged by this whole exercise because it went south quickly, and I'm in the PR marketing side of things, and there were 15 brand damaging things that went on during that critical period there. You literally pitted the city against each other. I don't think it advanced them at all. There are people who will
What's-
never buy seasons tickets again because they're upset about last
What may be
summer.
worse is the story's not done.
Okay, how so?
Well, I think many people think the story's done because we've all agreed on a location.
Well, educate us.
Well, that's just the start of the issue. So the Ticats have been suggesting over and over again they want compensation during construction. They're going to have to change their schedule. They may have to be on the road more, not have as many home games. And they've been floating the idea that maybe the city should give them, $3, $4, $5 million a year for that. That's not been settled. I'm hopeful that if we're going to rebuild Ivor Wynn, that someone's going to buy some of the houses around Ivor Wynn to create a bit more of a buffer zone. One of the problems today is that it's hard up against houses.
Yeah,
So
but
if
then
you
those
want to have a
houses would
concert,
lose their driveway leasing.
well, okay, there may be that, but those
Don't we count on those houses?
but those are the same people who say you can't have the Bee Gees perform a fundraising concert for St. Joe's on a Sunday
Yeah, but it's the
afternoon.
Bee Gees, dude, come on.
Well,
right.
pick,
Sorry,
pick
that
whoever. Pick Celine Dion. I don't care who you want to pick.
Not getting any
But
better.
something that's very middle of the road, and they
Right,
say they
gotcha.
can't. If we're going to invest that kind of money, we need to create a precinct.
Right.
Well, that hasn't been sorted out.
So what you're
the
saying-
tenders haven't sorted out yet. The tenders don't happen, I think, until August or September. I guarantee you there's probably going to be some cost overruns. This story has just begun.
Are we looking at another summer of Pan Am blues?
Two.
Oh,
I was just gonna say, where would those people go in those houses? Like, you talking about the houses?
the city's gonna buy up the whole area?
Yeah. Well, not the. I don't know what the whole area means, but
Oh,
I
like
think
a
you've got to
like a
create.
vicinity
You've got to
around it?
create a precinct.
Yeah.
And you've got to create a buffer zone, not for cars, just for fans to get in and out that isn't hard up against houses.
Right.
Otherwise, we're investing literally hundreds of millions of dollars in a facility for 8 games, and that just does not make sense.
So
Right.
what makes you so passionate about Pan Am? Because of all the things I've talked to you about, even about NHL bids, I haven't seen as much intensity.
Well, I just felt really bad for this city that was trying to do something really good, and then this private sector interest came along and led us around by the nose. And I just don't understand how everyone let them get away with this. And I suppose also that this idea of Savior Bob, yes, he owns the team, but I'm not sure he's got deep pockets, and I'm not sure what the legacy that his years are going to be. They've lost more games than they've won. I can't believe that a losing team in Hamilton has done that much for our image nationally. Put it in context. If they have to go, let them go. I'd much rather have Hamilton Health Sciences or McMaster University than this team.
People may argue that you're a Hamilton by choice, not by birth, as am I. So maybe we don't look at it with the same kind of passion of this is the living brand of our city. Hamilton's by birth. Ticats mean a whole lot to you. Weigh in for us.
Yeah.
Why is it such a big deal? They're just a football team now? Sorry, no.
I was getting into the pizza there. Sorry. I don't know. I think it's a lot of history. Growing up with them, having a sports team in your town is a lot different than not. Like I don't know. It's just
So why has Mississauga grown almost twice the rate that we have? They don't have a team.
I have
They
no
don't-
idea,
they-
but they're missing out.
They don't have a Hamilton Place.
But
true.
Mississauga, I mean, what history does Mississauga have? There's what legacy are they going to leave behind? Square one?
More people have chosen to live there than have chosen to live here.
I think the Ticats are a highway to the golden age. And if the Ticats ever leave, then I think a lot of people think that the city is devastated. more than
Why-
anything.
why am I
It'd
the-
be like the Sabres leaving Buffalo.
Why am I the only one that thinks, what about the Bulldogs?
Because you bartended at the keg and you met them all.
Yeah. Because you're a puck bunny. Just saying.
They play way more games. They're connected to the NHL so closely because the Canadians send players up and down all the time. You want to see NHL hockey for cheap? Go watch an NHL game.
Yeah, but they're not wearing the Canadian jerseys, so it's
They're
not the same.
coming in second.
But the mythology's not the same.
And they're coming into semifinals. They actually win. I don't understand the whole Ticats.
Well,
I
just to
don't
pick
need
up
to go
on-
back, but
yeah.
this idea about the link to the past
Can
is
I
quite
just
strong.
say what he said, because I'm not sure the mic picked it up. Our producer made the comment that the Ticats are sort of the last vestige of the golden age.
That's right.
Once they leave, then you have to give up the dream of 1955 Hamilton.
Yeah, and I do understand that, and that's been the concern all along. For a while with Mayor Morrow, if you go back a couple of mayors, he was always trying to recapture the 50s
Well,
rather
look
than
at-
embracing the time ahead. And the
Look
future
at John
of Hamilton was
Monroe,
quite
his
different.
campaign, failed campaign, was return to greatness, was
Right.
his slogan. And I remember thinking, oh man, is that all we can do here is go backwards?
But it's hard for people, when you feel you've had the brass ring within your grasp, to let that one go, knowing there's a different kind of brass ring in the future.
And I don't think people know what Hamilton's future holds. I think there's a lot of different perspectives or a lot of
Actually,
different.
I probably can tell you, whether they ever meant to or not, right now, Hamilton's future, today, is as the one end of the Golden Horseshoe. So we are an integrated community into the Golden Horseshoe. Our primary export is labor. So every day more people leave this city to go work elsewhere, but they love living here, and we've become a bargain for people to live here. We have a good quality of life. There's a lot of things that people love about this city, but
Good edge to the
whether we
city.
meant to or not, we're primarily a bedroom community anchoring
Right.
one end of the Golden Horseshoe.
So you know, one of the
Yeah.
reasons I wanted to invite you into the Lair, because this is not an issues forum, it's an interesting person forum, is that very few people, when someone says, I wonder what the future is of our community, says, I can tell you, actually, this is what it is. That you are very good at giving answers to questions
There
other
you go.
people only flounder around with. Well, you have been a tremendously fun guest. I knew you
Bless
would
your
be,
heart.
Marvin. Thank you. We could talk to you all night long. We'll have you back in the Lair.
My pleasure, anytime.
Thank you. Well done. Eh? The Pundit Gallery is a pleasure.
Anytime.
Thanks, Marvin. That was awesome.
Chats in the Lair is a Power Group production. Visit us at powergroup.ca or laircast.com, or check us out on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.